everyone. The Valley is Res on Octagon, and so I can start testing new cards. Unfortunately, you won't see too many videos of me testing new cards because firstly, I think the new data pack is quite lousy in terms of card quality, and secondly, but more importantly, regional season is arriving, and I'm going to focus more on competitive decks. So apologies to you viewers, but still, I'll try to do my best to slot in one or two videos like this. This is my attempt at making a good Page Piper deck. Page Piper, initially, my knee-jerk reaction to it was with most other people, it seemed like a very good consistency card for NR. But the more I thought about it, the more I realized that Page Piper is overrated. People are hyped up about it, but it's really not as good as you think. It basically does the same thing as Replicator, except in the red faction instead. And we all know how Replicator is so uncommonly played. It's not that good. Yes, the thing with Page Piper is that you're forced to basically include 3 copies of every card to maximize the use of Page Piper so that you can thin your deck as much as you can. The problem with doing that is that you hit your 45 minimum card limit very quickly. And nowadays, card variety is very important. You cannot survive with just a core breaker set. You need a lot of tools to deal with all the ice that the core can throw at you. The other important thing to know about Page Piper is that even if you have lots of duplicates in your deck, you do not necessarily want to fire Page Piper off all of them. Let's take a look at my deck list and see how that stacks up. Looking at my deck list, there are some cards that I play 3 of, such as Cash, Data Sucker, Parasite. These are not necessarily cards that I want to mill with Page Piper. Data Sucker, maybe, but definitely not Parasite, because I'd rather have Parasites in my deck so I can use them on demand when I draw into them. So looking at the number of cards that I would immediately mill with Page Piper, there's only 8 of them. 8 is actually quite a lot already. Most cards will have much less than this number. These are usually either unique cards or cards that provide no benefit when you install multiples of them, like 2 Corrodas or 2 Mediums. 2 Mediums will help, but you almost never install that many. So as you see, for a Page Piper deck to truly work, as in for Page Piper to be truly effective, you need to play lots of resources, lots of breakers, and that means less events, and generally event-based decks are better. So it's my hope that with the deck thinning power of Page Piper, I can see these events much more often when I draw, which means better deck quality. That's the whole point of playing Page Piper. Now let's get into the game. I find myself up against a Titan Transnational, and he gets a very good start off. Ice Hedge Fund. Now my opening hand is very good. I mean, think about it. I only have 1 copy of Lucky Find in my deck, and I see it right away. And my first draw turns out to be a Page Piper. So immediately I can get to work with testing how effective Page Piper is going to be. Alright, so Page Piper now removes 2 more cards from my deck, the 2 extra copies of Page Piper. And then I play my Lucky Find to end the turn. So looking at my hand, I have a Yogg, which will get me through Code Gates, and a Medium, which I really wanted to exploit, but my opponent being smart, not only does he place an Ice on top of R&D, he knows the Medium is coming, so he places his Crystal Grid on R&D as well, a very good call. So I'm definitely not going to look to install my Medium anytime soon. I need to get rid of the Crystal Grid on R&D before getting anything done. Now the good news is I do see an Errand Boy on top of HQ, which means that the moment I draw into my Parasite, that Errand Boy is going to town. Town being the archives, of course. Here I install a daily cast, and I do not replicate it with Page Piper for obvious reasons. You want multiple copies of daily cast in your deck. You do not want to take your economy out of your deck. Speaking of economy, my opponent's doing very well in terms of economy. So I need to catch up, and that I do by installing Aesop's. I was quite pissed off because Aesop's was in my opening hand, but as I kept drawing for more cards, I found my second copy of Aesop's, which shouldn't have been the case. What I should have done was to install Aesop's very early on and trash both copies of Aesop's from my deck, thereby improving my draw quality. The moment I drew into the Aesop's, the second copy of Aesop's, that was 1 click wasted, which is what Page Piper will save you, 1 click from drawing redundant cards. So here my opponent installs and advances what seems to be an agenda. He seems to be rushing, and rushing behind an Enigma he is. Thankfully it wasn't a barrier. I was very happy when I saw the Enigma because I had the Yogg in hand, install the Yogg, go score Chronos Project. Big deal. Yes, very big deal. Swung 2 agenda points in my favor. one away from him and one towards me. And that prevented my heap from being reorganized into exile, which doesn't really matter at this point. So, as I was saying, Page Piper actually changes the way you want to play your deck. For most other decks, you are okay with drawing first or second click, but in this deck, you do not want to draw until you install the cards from your hand. If you have a York in your hand, you want to install it so that you don't draw into your duplicate Yorks. The same applies for the Aesops, and that is something I'm learning as I play this game. This is my first run with the deck, so yeah. Alright, so he attempts to score an agenda in the revolt. It seems like an agenda, but I'm not interested in contesting it because he replaced the Enigma with a new piece of ice. I'm pretty sure that the new piece of ice is probably something that ends the run. And if it's not a code gate, it's probably a barrier. So knowing that I don't have a corroder in my hand, I'm not going to fight a battle which I'll lose, waste a click. Instead, I'll fight R&D, which he let me through, and I do see the Christian grid, I definitely trash it. In the meantime, he does get his agenda off, the Atlas. Yeah, so I'm basically guessing that the ice on his remote is a barrier, and I'll just keep drawing turn after turn until I find my barrier breaker. And now, since he shows that he's not going to rest his R&D ice, I'm going to install medium and run. He does not rest the R&D ice, which means that it must be very porous, or that it's an archer, and he doesn't want to sack his Atlas for it. Either way, I'm getting through and seeing two cards, Data Raven and Scorched Earth, so that confirms that he's running a flatline deck. I need to keep the I've Had Words in my hand. It was the right choice not to play early on. But right now, I don't have to be worried about flatline just yet. He only has 10 credits, I have 12, so things are still looking good. But it really makes me wonder what the R&D ice is. In fact, I have a clearer idea of what his remote ice is than his R&D ice. R&D ice, I mean, seriously, what could it be? He has 10 credits, he refuses to res it when I have a medium on the board. I have no idea. But yes, the remote ice is quite, there's a very high chance it's a barrier. It certainly is not a yoggable code gate. Well, it could be a Lotus Field. That would be really annoying as well. In the meantime, yes, he does fortify R&D, and I know that that's the data Raven I'm about to see, so I run it. I force him to res it because I know I have a Parasite in hand that will definitely hit the Data Raven. Killing the Data Raven is much more important than killing the Errand Boy. And anyway, since I don't have any form of HQ pressure, there's not much need for me to run HQ yet. Although I do suspect his hand is agenda flooded because I haven't seen him use Jackson Howard yet. In the meantime, I do run Archives because I've milled 3 cards so far. Use one with Cash, one with Medium, one with Parasite, and I find a firmware updates. So, yes, you might be wondering about the ID choice. Well, usually Max is the most competitive Anarch, but Max will cause me to mill my deck too much if I play it with Page Piper, and I'm not interested in splashing for Levi, wasting 3 influence anyway. So, of the other Anarch IDs, since I'm using Cash Recursion, Noise seems to be the most natural and most powerful choice since I can place pressure on Archives as well. And the thing is, my opponent isn't expecting me to run a standard breaker suite. Most Noise decks nowadays go full on viruses, which mean that they are very weak to rush plays such as scoring behind at Enigma. So my opponent thought that Enigma was a very safe piece of ice to score behind, but he just got unlucky because I was playing a different kind of Anarch deck. A very standard Anarch breaker suite that can easily get through remote servers with the right breakers. Speaking of the right breakers, I finally found my corroder. Good news. In the meantime, he does get what seems to be an agenda in the remote. Once again, I'm not interested in contesting it because I'm getting low on credits, and that turn, I needed to end on 5 cards in my hand. That is something very important. Without Plascrete, if you are relying on I've Had Worse to save you from flatline, you need to have 5 cards in your hand to defend against a flatline. Okay, so what he does here is to use Mark Yale's ability and uses an Atlas counter to get a Scorched Earth. Now, he tries to rush an agenda behind a piece of ice. I'm pretty sure that is a barrier or a Lotus Field. If it's a Lotus Field, there's absolutely nothing I can do about it. I'll just bounce off. But if it's a barrier, as I suspected here, the only way I'm going to contest the agenda is if I hit KT for money, install Corroder, 3rd click, run his server. I have one more click, but I did not want to face check the remote ice. Why? face check it without the corrodor, because I need the last click to draw one last card so that I can be safe from flatline. He does show me a barrier. I was right with my guess, so I can break the barrier for only 4 credits and scoring the very crucial high-risk investment. Yes, high risk indeed in trying to score that. So with my last click, I drew up to 5 cards. This means that I'm almost safe from flatline. He is pretty, he doesn't even have enough credits to see double scotch me, so that's fine. But most importantly, I liberate the agenda. So that was a very risky guess right there. It could have backfired if that was an archer, but it wasn't. So thank goodness for that. As I continue playing this game, I realized that archer was my biggest fear. Because if it hits both my York and my Corroder, now all my breakers will be in the heap. That is awful news. I have no backups, only deja vus, and you really don't want to use deja vus on breakers. That will set you back a very long way. So here I run R&D hoping that it's not an archer. Turns out it's a wormhole. So that's why he didn't want to res it on earlier on. But now, seeing that my medium is quite stacked, he is forced to res the wormhole so that it will end the run. Before this, there was no end the run on the table, so resing wormhole wouldn't have done anything for him. So yes, now I'm completely unable to contest R&D, so the only thing I can do now is to run his remotes and find another agenda he was trying to sneak out. So that was pretty huge because that prevents him from getting lots of credits from firmware updates. In the meantime, I'm just going to speed up the video because my opponent basically realized that he had very little chance of winning the game because I was safe from flatline with I had worse, and he couldn't score agendas because his eyes were generally too thin for me. Once I got my entire breaker suite out, I basically could chew through most of his eyes, except for the wormhole, except for an archer. He couldn't find his big eyes, unfortunately. Unfortunately, all he got was his tiny eyes that I could easily break through between my economy and my breaker suite. I did see an archer in the archive, so I was very afraid. So I was really trying to draw up my data sucker. That is my only ticket into archer, and I finally found it, so I can finally contest his remote safely. I also have a clone chip to as a backup to backup Parasite to lower ice strength by 1 in case it's needed. So at this point, I just continuously whack his HQ and archives to accumulate 6 data sucker tokens. This allows me to finally Parasite that very annoying wormhole down the drain, and I access enough cards to win me the game. So yeah, it is quite hard to evaluate the effectiveness of Page Piper because I did get rid of quite a few redundant cards from my stack, but it's quite hard to actually quantify how good it is, and especially when you compare it against including some other card like more draw power with Earthrise Hotel. Is Page Piper better than Earthrise Hotel? It's very hard for me to tell. What I do know is that I ended up drawing a lot this game, and it could have easily cost me the game not finding the Corroder early on. Page Piper allows you to thin your deck, but it doesn't actually help you tutor stuff. So if you need that Corroder, your only route is to manually draw, and that takes quite a lot of time still. So that's still a weakness. On the other hand, it's worth noting that economy was not really a struggle this game at all, because as I kept trying to draw into my Corroder, I was naturally drawing into money as well. So I never really felt like I was at a pinch when it comes to forking out credits to trash Mark Yale, to get through his eyes, etc. And that's another intangible benefit of playing Page Piper. One more thing worth noting with this deck, because I'm including so many redundant copies of programs and resources, I don't have the deck space to include the typical useful items such as Imp, such as Nerve Agent, or Clot, or Lamprey. There just isn't enough deck space for utility, and this could be a major liability in other matchups. Thanks for watching. Happy net running. Goodbye.